Call to order, City of Forest Park, council meeting number 1315, June 4, 2018. Let's begin for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Burns.
Here.
Collins.
Here.
Herbie.
Here.
Holt.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Ness.
Here.
All members are counted, present and accounted for. Is there a motion to excuse the law director? Councilwoman Herbie.
I would move to excuse City Solicitor, City Law Director John Wyckoff.
Second.
Been moved and second that we excuse the law director, Mr. Wyckoff. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to excuse, let it be known by the sign of voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Law director is excused. Next item on the agenda is the minutes. You should have all received copies of the minutes from the various meetings in the past. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as presented. Item number 3 is presentations. We have no presentations from the council this evening. So we'll go to item number 4, communication from the public. This is a time for citizens to comment on matters before council or to ask questions of concern to them. When recognized, please come forward to the podium, give your name and address, and then state your comments or questions. Council meetings are tape recorded for ease of transcriptions. Comments are limited to 5 minutes. I see that we have with us tonight members from the Historic Society who will address the council under this article for communications from the public. Mr. Wears.
Yes, my name is Brandon Wears, and I am representing the Historical Society tonight, and have arranged for a presentation that we've come to call the Moment for History. And the choice for tonight's moment came to mind as a result of newsletters turned over to the Historical Society 2 weeks ago from home files George Fraley was considering throwing away. This is the file that he turned over, and as an afterthought, he actually contacted the Historical Society and asked if we were interested, and if so, he would transfer them to us and not throw them away. So I was glad that he made that decision. And it was a trip down memory lane because George and I were members of the same council for 4 years. His October 1982 issue in that file was the one that caught my eye particularly because we had a material in the archives that I could use to augment which was in his newsletter. I edited that information from the archives into an executive summary of which you all should have been given a copy. George is this evening's presenter. He was elected to council in 1979 and served until 1983.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I am George Fraley, and I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. Thank you, Brandon, for that introduction. The idea for a Forest Park City Planning Retreat was first put forth with a broad outline in 1981, my second year as a member of the council. The concept was to draw upon a diverse group of Forest Park denizens to generate ideas, concepts, and models for consideration by the City Council. The rationale for such a gathering of ideas was the belief that none of us is as smart as all of us. And accordingly, the City Council in isolation might well be missing opportunities for future growth and enhancement of the city's future. Accordingly, the ideas to be generated would then be the responsibility of the council for consideration and, if appropriate, for implementation. Planning was undertaken to set a date, find a suitable location, and most importantly, to identify prospective participants. The council wanted to ensure that there would be widespread representation from all city concerns. Thus, in addition to members of the council, representatives from each of the city's staff departments, the commissions and committees of the city, the local media and business leaders, and other interested citizens were intended to be included. The retreat was held in October 1982 at Wilmington College with 44 people participating. Their names and affiliations are shown in the spreadsheet that has been provided to you. The cost for the event was $18.50 per person, and which it included the overnight accommodations and the meals. The cost was borne by each individual. The approach used was to divide into small groups for sessions on Friday evening and Saturday morning, with each group considering ideas on predetermined subject areas as shown in the spreadsheet that has been provided. The Friday night small groups dealt with public safety, environmental design, public information, truth in marketing, public service, and commercial development. The Saturday morning small groups considered parks and recreation, a town center, the quality of integrated life, human relations, finance, community recognition days, and residential investment. On Saturday afternoon, the entire group met to hear small group reports, receive comments regarding those reports, and to seek to reach consensus on what the group considered to be priority items. Councilmember Ed Rigaud led this portion of the retreat. In hindsight, a few observations can be made. The retreat did provide for a vehicle for generating ideas to benefit the city. The Forest Park News reported at the time that such a retreat may have been a first, at least in this area. 5 of those who participated later served as members of this council. Record keeping from that event should have been better. There is no record of the ideas or proposed action steps, and while I believe that some of the retreat ideas were implemented, we cannot find that subsequent council actions were a direct result of ideas generated at the retreat. The concept of a broadly based group of council, staff, and citizenry coming together to express ideas for future consideration should still hold merit. In light of a new city manager and Forest Park's future, it might prove to be of value to again hold such a retreat to help acquaint the new manager with citizen views and concerns. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, George. I haven't seen you over at the place in a while.
That's true. I was explaining to Brandon, I typically go walking or bicycling instead of working out indoors.
Yeah, I go in the afternoons now. That 6 o'clock in the morning is a little bit early for me.
We'll connect again.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
I'd like to give some closing remarks, if I may. George was no longer on council when the decision was made to purchase 235 acres across the street. And then it was at that time zoned residential. The purchase from HUD, who owned the land by default, came in 1984, and it was followed by rezoning to commercial and development by the city. George's term ended in '83, so he wasn't here when that decision was made and didn't participate in it. But it is an outgrowth, in my opinion, of thinking that came forth at that time. Now, I have to thank Ray Hodges for some work that I requested be done, research, whether that model for a retreat was ever repeated, and it was. It turns out in 1989, it was used again. It was a retreat held at Bergamo Center in Centerville and facilitated by Chip Henderson. 2 results that come to mind were the formation of the Quality of Life Task Force in 1990 and the authorization to perform an update of our master plan, which also occurred in 1990. So the model has some legs, that's my point, and George got it started with his invention.
Thank you. And as always, before we go to our committee reports and the rest of the meetings, thank you, gentlemen, again for being here, and feel free to leave unless you wanted to stay and listen to what we have to say now.
I just would like to say, I think this is really a great approach, comprehensive and quite a bit interdisciplinary. As an interdisciplinary study majors at Miami University, this is how a lot of work ends up being accomplished on a very large scale. So thank you so much for bringing this to us.
And I second her statement.
Go ahead.
Yes, I did want to comment that several years ago, we did a strategic planning which involved a number of meetings with staff and with council. And I was the Ways and Means Chair, and I think was probably chaired that. I have a lot of those minutes from that if the Historical Society may want. And so I will pass that on to you. I said I have a lot of the notes from that, I think, in my possession. So I will be sure to try to see that this Historical Society gets that.
All right, thank you again. We'll move to item number 5, reports of standing committees. First of the standing committees being Law Committee, Councilwoman Collins.
I have no report from the Law Committee at this time. I'm available for questions if anyone has any.
Any questions for Councilwoman Collins? Hearing none, we have no items on the agenda for the meeting of the 11th. Do you have any to add?
No, I do not.
Next committee report is Human Resources Committee, Councilwoman Holt.
I do not have a human resource report tonight, but I would like to let all of the residents know that this weekend will be the judging of the yards. Are you ready, Mr. Smith? That will end my report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Councilwoman Holt? I would add to what she said just 2 things. We still need 2 more judges, I believe. So if any council members would like to volunteer to join us judges, please contact the switchboard between now and the end of the day on Wednesday, if you would be interested in becoming one of those 2 second judges. And I might hasten to add that we would like to have people to volunteer, and feel free to take advantage of that so that we as council can lead as well as follow. Denise, I have no items on the agenda for you for the 11th. Do you have any to add?
No, I do not. Thanks.
Next report is Public Improvement and Facilities, Councilwoman Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have a report at this time, but I would like to let the residents know that We Thrive is having a summer fitness series starting Saturday, June 9th through August the 4th, and that's every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we welcome everyone to come out. It's free and open to the public.
It's at the,
It will be at Wynwoods Intermediate School, 825 Waycross Road. And please come out.
Okay.
That completes my report.
Any questions for Councilwoman Moore?
Yeah, I have a question. Would you like to say something about your OKI meeting that you attended and what they?
Yes, I was going to report that at our work session, but so that was a OML. Yeah, that was a OML meeting. The OKI meetings are once a month, but we did attend, and Councilman Collins was there as well. Smart cities, and so I've been going to several meetings throughout the month regarding smart cities and Access 2045, what transportation will look like in 2045. And also they're talking about drones and how transportation will look. And so it's been very interesting. So at our next work session, I would like to present all the information that I obtained.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Do you have any items for the work session on the 11th?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Next report is Public Safety Committee, Councilwoman Ness.
I do not have a report at this time, Mr. Mayor, but I just wanted to remind the residents that on Thursday, June 14th at 7 p.m. at the Senior Center, we'll be having a community patrol meeting. A lot of good things are happening there and with getting to know one another. So we hope that everyone can come out.
Any questions for Councilwoman Nuss? Hearing none, Councilwoman Nuss, I have no items. Do you have any to add for the meeting on the 11th?
I do not.
Next report is Ways and Means Committee, Councilwoman Herbie.
Yes, I have a couple reports. One is, you may have noticed the summary of our finances, and the receipts from the business tax filing revenue that's being collected by the state is running very, very far behind what we should have received by this time. And also, many of these forms that they're still requiring still haven't been created by the state and aren't available. So I hope that, that will all be reconciled and we will receive all of the tax money that's generated by the businesses that are filing at the state by the end of the year. The second report is, I wanted to give you a heads up that at the work session, we will have an incentive agreement to bring to council from the Economic Development Commission. And then finally, I wanted to kind of report on some of the results of the environmental awareness programs. The pilot program for tree removal, to date, 38 houses have had 65 trees removed. The company that we contracted with is still finishing that up because of the severe wet weather that we had through the spring. We've had 43 homes that have had their attics winterized. They receive up to a 50% subsidy, up to a maximum amount of $1,000. In the citywide yard sale, 85 households participated. And the St. Vincent de Paul trailer, which was provided for unsold items, collected over 2,400 pounds of material for reuse and recycling. We've had 38 of 95 trees that have been reserved in the Reforesting Forest Park program. There are still trees available if anyone wants to order those. In the community paper shredding, which occurred the same day as the yard sale, over 260 cars brought over 17,400 pounds of paper to be shredded. And we want to thank the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and the Phi Psi Omega chapter who volunteered and initially started that program. The solid waste collection contract is up for renewal this year, and we're negotiating that. And then finally, approximately 21 large appliances have been collected, the majority of those containing Freon. And so I thank the Environmental Awareness Program for all of its work.
Any questions for Councilwoman Herbie? For the work session on the 11th, we have two items, new note legislation and master lease. Do you have any to add? Next committee report is community development. Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a follow-up. I think everyone received an email today concerning the company that was commissioning for or petitioning for a marijuana distribution license. That distribution request failed. Although they did score high, they did not receive a license. So that pursuit is probably not going to occur in Forest Park. So just by way to wrap up the public hearing we had 2 weeks ago. And also just to remind everyone, the code enforcement for property maintenance is well underway. The city is working very diligently to maintain grass and all the other compliance efforts that do occur during the summer. So please do your best to maintain your yard so the city won't have to. And with that, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to respond.
Any questions for Councilman Barnes?
In the email, they did not state what areas got the marijuana dispensaries. Do you have any idea?
There was actually a report in there that showed who received licenses by area or county. I didn't see that. It was in.
I didn't see that.
There was an attachment.
There were, to answer your question, there was 3 in Hamilton County, all of which were within the city limits of the city of Cincinnati. They were, now, I think one thing to keep in mind is these were companies who had made submissions for license. And these were companies that scored higher in the rankings. And as Mr. Burns says, the company in Forest Park, they scored 171 points. I think the highest total points was 185. That's not to say that those companies that, I think the word that they used in the news release was, had been approved to possibly, they use the word possibly because they still have to meet requirements. And if those companies don't meet requirements, that's not to say that others might replace them, nor is that to say that this is, there would be just one round. There may be subsequent rounds later on, depending.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Burns? Mr. Burns, I have no items on the agenda for you for the work session of the 11th. Do you have any to add?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Next report is intergovernmental relations and communications. That's my report. I don't have any specific report. I can tell you that the courts are busy, and we're likely to get busier. We normally do during the summer. I have no items on the agenda for that committee for the work session. I'll take any questions if there are any. Hearing none, we'll go to item number 6, the mayor's report. A couple of things that I would report is the seniors had their spring fling dance on, I think it was May 25th at the senior center. Good time was had by all, to the point that I think they stayed about a half hour longer than we were scheduled to stay. I believe there was there was over 130 people in attendance. Very nice evening, and I think everybody enjoyed themselves. And as usual, it was another trouble-free event for Forest Park. Also, last Friday, I attended the luncheon in the Senior Center for the retirement of Chief Cannon. That was for the employees. There were obviously a number of not only present police officers and city employees there were a number of retired police officers and a number of police officers from other jurisdictions there. And again, on behalf of the city, we would like to thank Chief Cannon and his family for all of their service to the city. Secondly, for your information, and you probably I know you got emails and flyers on, but I would just remind you that on Monday, the 11th, there will be a special council meeting that will start at 6:50, and we were going to adjourn into executive session, and the purpose of that meeting is to interview the 2 companies that we are looking at for in relationship to the recruitment of the new city manager. The council meeting, the initial opening of the council meeting will be here in Chambers. We will then adjourn into executive session up in room 3B. And I'm aware that there is a 6:30 meeting, I believe, of the Ways and Means Committee. So the Ways and Means Committee will have 18 minutes for their meeting, so that Sally can get everything reset for our meeting. Following the executive session, as usual, there will be no business done in that executive session. We will come back here to Chambers where we will adjourn that executive session, and then we will have our work session. All of that being on the 11th. So again, make sure that you review the material that you have, and I want to thank Human Resources Director Andy Leftwood and City Manager Ray Hodges for all of the preparatory work that they've done in order to make this much more as educational for us and as informative for us as possible. Each of the 2 companies will be given some, I believe it's 20 minutes to do a presentation. If you have not participated in one of these before on any level, the purpose of the presentation basically is to acquaint us with the company. Most of the questions that will be asked will be as a result of the presentation itself, because they're going to tell us what they do, they're going to tell us how they go about doing it, and so review your material, but also be very attentive during the presentations. And having said that, though, keep in mind that this presentation is like any other business presentation. We're being sold a product, and whenever businesses are selling products, if they have any sense at all, they put their best foot forward, which is why we get to ask the questions afterward. We don't, nobody buys just the presentation. You ask in-depth questioning afterwards. But also, let me just say that we want to make sure this is not the meeting that we're going to have with the company after we've chosen a company to basically tell them specifically what our specifics are. This is for them to tell us how they're going to go about doing it. And there's a little bit of a twist in one of these. I think you got an email regarding one of the companies, because one of the companies is also doing a similar activity for a surrounding community. That would end my report. I'll answer any questions if there are any. Hearing none, item number 7, the city manager's report. Mr. Hodges.
Thank you. Everything is operating well and as we would expect it, so I would only report that the departmental reports have all been completed, included in the council packet, and also placed on file with the clerk of council for public inspection. That would conclude my report, but I would respond to any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Mr. Hodges? Hearing none, thank you, sir. Next order of business is other reports. Clerk of Council, Mrs. Dirksen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have a report this evening.
Any questions for Clerk of Council? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Dirksen. We then move to item number 9, new business. I have no listed new business items. Anybody have any new business items that they want to bring up, which would be legislation, and I don't have any. Hearing no new business, is there any further business to come before the body? Any further business to come before the body? Hearing none, council meeting is adjourned.